This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, highlighting all of Section 3, interviewing the greatest local coaches and athletes. Brought to you by SummitCars.com, broadcasting in the ESPN studios. Here's your host, Mike Bristol, and Eagle Newspapers' Phil Blackwell.
All righty then. Yes. So, Phil, what's been going on, buddy?
We've had an actual spring season. An actual start to the spring sports season. Sometimes it limps out of the gate because we're all waiting for the snow to melt and we're all waiting for the fields to dry. Well, that hasn't really happened this time. Most baseball and softball teams and tennis teams and golf teams or whoever have been out there have been able to practice outside and play plenty of games. For example, the CBA softball team is defending the Class B sectional title. They've played, I think, 6 games already. 7. Think about it. You'd be lucky to get 1 game in some seasons. But they've been able to do so. Even those teams that are heading down to the next week for the spring break to places like Myrtle Beach, a lot of the big baseball teams are heading down there. And, of course, all the lacrosse that's been going on. And, boy, a lot's happened there.
And we've got Phil and I will get into the top 10, of course. We've got a great program for you. Let's just get right to that, and then we'll jump in a little bit of the top 10. But we've got our Aflac Spotlight interview with members of the Marcellus girls lacrosse team. And as they seem to do each year, the Mustangs, they position themselves for championship push, still seeking their first sectional title in program history. I know a tough last night loss to CBA, but the Mustangs started 3-0 this season, including wins over Byram Hills, New York City, a road trip, which was last week, and we'll talk about that. Also, so we'll have Coach in the studio. We'll have Stephanie O'Rourke. And 3 captains, Anna Vetch, Katie, what is it?
Wangnes.
Okay, and Emma Hutchings, all will be here in studio, so it'll be fun to chat with the Marcellus girls lacrosse team. And then after that, we've got our SummitCars.com spotlight interview with the Syracuse Post-Standard High School writer Nolan Weiner. Let's talk about that for a minute.
This is fun because this week, Syracuse.com, they came out with the list of the top 100 high school athletes in their view. It was a months-long project in Central New York's history, and it encompasses all sports, what they did in high school, but also what they did in the colleges and the pros. Guaranteed to stir up a lot of conversation, guaranteed to cause some arguments about the people that were left out or who were ranked there or here. And I mean, we're gonna hash all this out with Nolan as he's in the studio. It's gonna be a lot of fun, I think.
All right, so that'll be fun to do that as well. Let's get right to the top 10 here for a couple minutes before we start talking to some of our guests. But as Phil pointed out, it turns out to be a big week in high school boys lacrosse, at least among the larger schools. FM at the center of it, still facing Class A opponents despite its move to Class B for the postseason. You got the Hornets. They hosted Baldwinsville Tuesday night. Played the Bees again Saturday, which we'll talk about that. Pelcher, Arcaro Stadium, of course. Thursday trip, West Jenny. In between, we'll chat about that here for a second, go through those games. In fact, let's do that first before I get to CNS. Go ahead, Phil.
FM, what a week it's been already. I mean, Tuesday night, they host Baldwinsville. It's a game they lead most of the way. Baldwinsville comes back, gets in front in the fourth quarter by a couple of goals, but FM rallies, forces overtime, and then wins on Mike Howe's goal. Then they go to West Genesee Thursday night. It's a defensive game, back and forth. It's only 2-1 at halftime. But FM takes the lead in the third quarter. 3 different times West Genesee ties it. 3 different times FM gets the lead back, and they eventually hang on 6-5, basically by having the ball most of the time and possessing like crazy. So FM is still undefeated, but now they have the rematch with Baldwinsville this afternoon up at Pelcher Arcaro, and Beeville is still a pretty strong team. I mean, they handled Syracuse 21-3 the other night. They're going to be, again, a strong Class A side. Now, I also mentioned that CNS is playing awfully well. After an 0-2 start, they've won 4 in a row, including one over their rivals Liverpool Thursday night. Nice job at Jack McAndrews doing in his first season with the North Stars.
And Phil pointing that out as CNS facing Liverpool after both won Saturday. The North Stars over Lafayette, the Warriors holding off Watertown. Beeville, meanwhile, gave a good battle to 4-time state finalist Victor last weekend. Took a defeat 9-7 there and still has reason to feel obviously confident in a great stretch they had this season.
Yeah, Beeville, I mean, if you look, I think the Class A teams that are still there, because there's not many now. It's Beeville, Liverpool, CNS, West Jenny, not many others. But if you look at them as they face each other, the competition seems pretty even. We'll see. We'll learn a lot more in the next 2 weeks because, again, they'll play the league round robin, CNS and West Jenny next week. Beeville plays West Jenny a week following, and FM deals with all these people. And it seems fairly even among all these teams.
Another thing I want to point out, and all this followed the Wild Week with the JD boys lacrosse, so they owned a big way thanks to the teams that beat. First, the Red Rams handled its neighbors from ESM in the first of the 2 beaten between the sides. Now both how involved in here in Class C. Then you got JD erased a 4-goal deficit at West Jenny in the second half, trying a 7-7 with a back-to-back goals in the last few minutes and then scoring 14 seconds in overtime on Connor Durkin's goal straight off the faceoff. And you got to look at the Red Rams. Clearly very motivated after dropping last year's sectional semifinal to West Hill. And with the firepower it is showing, JD really might, when you think about this, beyond sectional honors, to add to its long legacy of state championships before it's all done. So you could see this team really continuing to roll and doing some big things and state championship stuff, type stuff. So, Phil, let's talk about JD here for a second. And, just like pointing out, just its long legacy of state championships here.
JD is putting on a mission this season because they had this run of almost a decade of winning consecutive sectional titles before West Hill ended it last year in the sectional semifinals. They've brought back a lot of talent, a lot of skill, and they've really put that on display already this season. That was a very impressive win over a very good ESM team that brings back Luke Versace and Lance Madonna from last year's sectional Class B champions. Then to go to JD and West Genesee. In that game, West Genesee's goalie, Luke Stout, might be the best goalie they've had since Galloway. I mean, he is some kind of goalie. He made about 19 saves in that game. But JD, and we're down 2 West Genesee with under 2 minutes left, tied it and pulled it out in overtime. And that's the sort of win that just gives you a rocket boost of confidence for the rest of the season. And JD might be the best team in the area overall. They just might, in terms of the skill they have and the hunger they've got to get back to the top.
Marcellus is on quite a roll here in boys lacrosse, too. The Mustangs last week knocked off Skaneateles right after the Lakers gave longtime coach Ron Doctor his 500th career win when it beat Homer earlier that week. So congratulations to Coach Doctor, of course. Then on Saturday, Marcellus withstood a furious late comeback from West Hill to win 7-6 and remain undefeated. Skaneateles shook off that defeat to Marcellus by beating General Brown on Saturday, and this after the Lions beat West Hill a week earlier. So again, the competition among the top Class D side here is quite close. West Hill, Marcellus, General Brown, Skaneateles all striving to claim that throne. CBA, who has started the season 1-1, is leaving behind as it moves to Class C once the playoffs here start.
Yeah, and CBA had a big win at Skaneateles on Thursday night. Rick Beardsley, we just had his show. That team seems to be gathering forces as well. They might be the next best team in Class C next to JD. We'll see. But as for the Class D, Marcellus is the cardiac kids this year. Let me tell you how many close games they've played. They had a come from behind overtime win at CNS. Then they had a 1-goal victory where they barely held on against West Hill. Then on Tuesday, they had a 2-goal lead, but Tully rallied to defeat them. The Black Knights moved to 3-0, and they were undefeated until I think Homer beat them on Thursday. Then Marcellus won another 1-goal game on Thursday night. I mean, so they've had a lot of and they play Carthage today, by the way, and coached by one of those top 100 athletes, by the way. We mentioned the top 100 athletes. One of them is Josh Kaufman, who is now the Carthage lacrosse coach who replaced the great Quattro, by the way. So that's a little teaser for that segment coming up. So, but Marcellus has had so many close games already this year. It was Lafayette that Marcellus beat on Thursday, coming from behind to win that. So they've had 4 1-goal decisions, I think, already this season.
Wow, look at that. So, among large schools on the girls lacrosse teams, it was West Jenny enjoying its the most dramatic action last week. The Wildcats took over late to defeat reigning state champion CB8 at LeBron Stadium here to rematch of last year's sectional final. Then it was a furious comeback by JD on Saturday afternoon, won 11-10 in overtime on Emily Stratton's goal. Let's chat about that first, then I want to talk about Baldwinsville and FM.
Yeah, with the West Genesee, I mean, they've had a very interesting start to the season. They started with a narrow defeat at West Hill. Then they go to CBA, and all road games, by the way. They didn't play a home game until today against Victor, by the way. Go to CBA, play an impressive second half to win that game. Go to JD, leads most of the way, gives up that lead, but hangs in, comes back, pulls out that one in overtime. And then maybe there was a little fatigue because they then fall at FM on Thursday after night. FM bouncing back from a defeat to Baldwinsville, which we'll talk about a little bit now. I mean, Baldwinsville, that was a very impressive win over FM on Tuesday night. Beaver might be the best Class A side just because they bring back so much from last year. They're deep, they're skilled, and they have a terrific defense.
So talking about Baldwinsville and FM, perhaps the area's top teams are both off to great starts. The Bees 4-0, the Hornets at 2-0. Twos obviously face off Tuesday night, Pelchar Carl Stadium. First of the 2 battles between the sides, and then FM is home to face West Genesee in another big-time Thursday night match. Rip through them all. Go ahead.
I want to talk about the statistical oddity from Tuesday night.
Yeah.
You had FM play Baldwinsville on the girls' side, and Baldwinsville won that game 11-10. And FM played Beeville on the boys' side, and the score was 11-10 for FM. So that's the exact same scores. Now, the girls' game did not go to overtime, but that's a nice statistical oddity. But as I was saying about FM, you wondered how they would bounce back after they led early and Beeville came back. How they bounced back. They were very impressive against West Genesee. They did not trail in that entire game. And when West Genesee made a run at them and pulled within one, they managed to shut them out for the game's last 17 or so minutes. If FM has a defense to go along with all that skill from the Shanleys and the Steigerwalds, they cannot just do the sectional thing that everybody thinks about. And remember, Auburn's off to a great start as well. But they can obviously think about the states as well.
Remarkably, let's talk about this here for a second. The same way that Skinny House Boys Lacrosse Ron Doctor got the 500th, okay? Lakers girls head coach Bridget Marcourt got her 300th win. So when her team routed Caz, let's talk about it, in 17 seasons, okay, Marcourt has won 12 sectional titles, 4 state championship, which marks actually few programs can actually ever match. One that will try for sure is Marcellus, who has won its first 2 games, prevailed in the Byram Hills last weekend during a New York City trip. We obviously know what happened with CBA, but how about Bridget? And Ron, what a great thing to have both coaches there at Skinny House with those.
Well, I remember so much about Bridget was, no, she's a mother, of course. Yep. And I remember she had her baby, I think, during the season a few years back and was coaching like a week later. I mean, it was like after she had the baby, right back coaching. I mean, you cannot keep her off the field ever. But what a brilliant coach and what a great program that's produced so many great players and obviously those championship teams. But Skinny Atlas girls might be like the JD boys, hungry again, because South Jefferson dethroned them last year in Class D. And that makes this group of Lakers, led by Olivia Navaroli, very, very hungry to get back to the top. But the difference is, I think, here is that South Jeff is still very good. Marcellus is going to be a factor again. And Westville already has some quality wins as well. And the competition between those teams appears very, very close, at least from the early results.
Phil, tell me about, I know we're going to have the girls in from Marcellus, but talk about that New York City trip for a second.
Well, they went down, played a game against Byram Hills, one of the top teams from downstate, won that game. Very impressive road win. You know, when you play a game like that, you're not only dealing with an unfamiliar team, you're also dealing with unfamiliar officials because they don't know how you play and they might whistle a lot of things on you. You see this in every sport. The fact that they pull out a win like that has to give them so much confidence for the rest of the season, knowing that, they'll be facing a tough schedule. In fact, their schedule now gets tough. Starting tomorrow when they play Shenandoah, the CBA game was the first of 5-day games in 9 days. That's how scrunched the lacrosse schedule is for people. You're playing a ton of games in a short amount of time, and you don't get much recovery time, much less time to practice and work out the kinks.
So then there's South Jefferson here on the girls' side, who's proven quite competitive against large school foes, of course, playing FM, tough and defeating CNS, knowing that the competition really won't be as heavy once they get into the Frontier League here.
Oh, South Jeff's got plenty of talent back from last season. They're not going to fall off in terms of the Class D contention. I mean, remember, they were an inch from being in the state championship game last year. They lost a narrow semifinal. And so I think they're still going to be heard from, no question.
All right, so we're going to talk baseball more in a little while, track and field. We'll get into boys tennis, and all that will be happening in the latter part of the show here. But before we do anything, I think, Phil, what do you want to start out with? Where do you want to go?
Marcellus. I think we'll go with the girls lacrosse team. Why not?
All right, we'll talk Marcellus girls in just a couple minutes here. This is the Inside High School Sports Show, and it's presented by
SummitCars.com.
Yeah, presented by SummitCars.com. We'll be right back.
This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, brought to you by SummitCars.com.
Now, here we are back on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Mike Bristol, Phil Blackwell, Marcellus girls across in studio, which is a lot of fun. Emma, your dad called me this morning just to make sure him and his...
I didn't know about it.
You didn't tell him about the interview?
Nope.
Really?
No.
Well, he knew all about it.
I know.
And he wanted to talk about... So your dad, one of the played football and lacrosse at Marcellus. He wasn't the best athlete, but he tried real hard. He really worked as hard as he could.
According to him, he's the best running back that Marcellus has ever had.
He was kind of slow, blew out his ACL as well. So, and your mother, who pretty much has all the athletic genes, so that's good. A part of the family that passed on to you girls. All right, so let's get rolling here. Our Aflac Spotlight interview, Coach Zach Iancello. What's up, Coach?
How's it going?
Good to have you in studio. You've done a nice job with the girls here at Marcellus.
Thank you very much.
And being a former Mustang, I like that, because if you didn't, I would ask for your resignation. No, that wouldn't be good. But
Yeah,
That would
not
be Coach
Intel.
O'Rourke as the former Mustang.
oh, Coach O'Rourke, and you're the assistant there. What's up, Coach?
How's it going?
Great to have you in studio. Talk nice and loud on that microphone there. So let's get rolling here, guys. Who do we have in studio? So Anna Vetch. What's up, Anna?
Nothing.
Where are you going to school?
Yale next
Nice. You excited?
year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be great. And Anna, you've got your cute mom jeans, so good job. Katie Wangsness.
Yes.
Yes, I got it. Katie, what's going on?
Got nothing.
Tell me a little bit about playing for the Marcellus girls lacrosse team.
It's awesome. I've been playing with these girls since like 3rd grade, so it's awesome being a senior captain with them.
Yeah, that's
really
great.
Fun.
Emma Hutchings, what's up, Emma?
Nothing.
So, Emma, talk about the girls. I know a tough one against CBA. So what happened in that one? Break that for us. Break that down.
They just kind of capitalized on our mistakes, like Ansel said earlier. We just kind of dropped the ball a little on our home field, but hopefully that was like a lesson for everyone to see like what it feels like, and hopefully it never happens again because it was not fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Coach, when you have a game like that, and it does happen, so what do you tell the girls?
Well, we say a lot of things. But a big thing that I've said the past couple of years is that it's not the mistakes that define us; it's what we do after.
Yep.
So we're all going to make mistakes on the field, off the field, whatever. It's what we're doing after the fact. So we have a good practice plan for today, and we're going to move forward. We get Shenendahoa tomorrow, so we want to make sure that we're moving forward.
Stephanie, let's go to you, assistant coach here on the team. So far, can you detect, I guess, any real difference between this team and the one that contended a season ago?
Yeah, I'd say so. This being our 2nd year, I feel like we're just embedding, the culture that we want to see in the program. It's great seeing how much the girls have improved even since last year. Really just establishing, our plays, our offense, our defense. The girls are really buying in, and I've noticed just this year, I feel like we have such a great team camaraderie. That's really awesome to see, and to have us be a part of it as well, now that we're no longer new coaches.
Yeah, that's great. And that's kind of the second part of the question. Zach, let's go to you for again. So now, second season here. How do you feel communicating with the players and where you're at with the program?
I think we're moving in the right direction. I think, for having a coach to be at that school for so long, obviously, and to do as much as he has for lacrosse at Marcellus, to go in a different direction is hard. So it's been really great to see the transition. Sometimes challenging, but sometimes a lot of fun to see some really stellar athletes really show their capabilities and really show their resilience to something new.
Anna, let's go to you. Let's talk about, I guess, how intense and serious the off-season workouts, the club play, and how last season ended here for you guys.
Yeah, pretty much right after last season, a lot of us continued to play over the summer, definitely through the winter, and a lot of girls play more than one sport, so a lot participated in soccer or tennis over the off season. I think that really helps us just keep in shape. So when we started this season, it really wasn't that hard to get back in shape. I think we're a very fit team, and that really shows on the field, and I think it's a lot because of how hard we all work in the off season. We would have workouts at the school, and our conditioning coach, Mr. Wisecon, he would always say how it was very impressive how many numbers we had at all of our workouts compared to the other teams. I think that really says a lot about our team.
That's great. Good job. Kate, let's go to you for a second. You didn't have many games the first couple of weeks, and Coach could probably answer this as well. Was that the plan or just how the schedule worked out, or what was the deal with early season here?
I think that's just how the schedule worked out, but I think it gave us a lot of time to practice before we get in game. We had about 4 scrimmages, so I think that helped us too. But we have a tough schedule coming on with a lot of games and in a short amount of time. So
that's great. Emma, all you girls traveled to New York City last weekend. Yep. You got a win over Byram Hills. Let's talk about that. I know your obviously parents went as well.
Yep.
Did you tell them not to go, or was that?
I think my parents are just so bored with they're just bored, so they
nesters.
come. Yeah, they're like empty nesters. So yeah, they came, they supported. It was miserable conditions, but they were in the stands cheering.
How was the win? Talk about playing Byram Hills and getting that W.
I think we weren't surprised at like how good they were gonna be. It was like hailing. It was pretty horrible out, and I don't think we were really ready for that either. But it felt good to get the win because after that long bus ride, we didn't want to play for nothing. So
I would say you're like, that's not good.
yeah.
Coach, let's go to you again here for a second. So I got to do let's get this rolling. Our SummitCars.com Spotlight interview. Starting on Sunday, there's 4 games, 7 days after today. Let's talk about that and the quality of practices, what it's going to be like, and playing all those games.
So a big piece to our practices is how are we doing mentally. We have what are called mental conditioning practices, where we change things up a little bit. We have everything in a double team. We condition every single day in some way or another.
Does that go back to your playing days or what? Where's the mentality come from?
So,
here we go.
I'm a big Herbs Brooks fan.
Oh yeah, all right.
And the legs feed the wolf, you know. So we make sure that we're the most conditioned team that we play against. But going into these next couple weeks, really game-packed weeks, we're just gonna play our game. You know, we're gonna fine-tune the little things that we need to and keep moving forward. And we add a little bit more of that confidence in each other. You know, really trying to work together. You know, it's hard to beat 12 girls on the field. So
yeah,
that's what we're got moving forward.
Coach O'Rourke, let's go to you. From what you've seen, I guess, of the other Class D contenders, let's talk about West Hill, Skaneateles, South Jeff. Who is the team to beat?
Oh God, I think
Who's
they're all
not
the team to beat.
Yeah.
You know, we're just going to take it one game at a time. Trying, like Coach said, trying to get better every single day, making sure that we're the most mentally and physically fit team out there. And just, you know, if we play our game, if we do what I know these girls can do, you know, we're the team to beat.
I like that attitude, O'Rourke. Anna, let's bounce to you. Let's talk about Yale.
Yep.
So what did it come down to? Talk about the different schools or what you're looking at. And
So pretty much throughout my recruiting process,
did you visit a bunch of schools and stuff?
Yeah, I visited a couple schools. I didn't really visit a ton. The main ones that I actually visited and were mostly considering was just UVM, UConn, and Yale.
Okay.
And pretty much the toughest decision was just between UConn and Yale because my sister plays at UConn. And that would have been just a really cool opportunity to be able to play with her because we've always been so close. So those were pretty much the two that I was down to. But ultimately, I decided to go with Yale because it's just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And if I have the opportunity to go there, it would be stupid not to go.
What are you going to study?
I'm not that sure yet.
Look at you. Emma, what are you doing? What's going on with you?
I'm going to Lemoyne next year.
Nice.
With
You
my
and Maddie
brother.
boy?
Oh yeah. Yep.
What? She's got now.
Yeah.
Maddie's an interesting cat.
Oh, Matt's a character.
Yeah, that's
It'll be
awesome.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Katie, how about you?
I'm going to Siena next year.
Oh yeah, you're wearing your Siena shirt. You're looking good. Are you wearing a Lemoyne shirt?
Yeah, my lacrosse shirt.
Where's your yeah, you should always wear that, even when you got your Yale colors. All right, let's talk about. We were talking about former players here for a second, but just overall, Marcellus girls lacrosse. So, Coach, talk about it, and it's just such an impressive program. Because always known for obviously soccer. Let's talk about lacrosse here. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a really good group to pick from at Marcellus. They're all. It seems like athletes are spawned there. They just keep coming. So when we are going out for the season, we know that at least we're going to have amazing athletes coming onto the field. And you know, I've always been under the impression we can teach stick skills. We can teach lacrosse. But hard work and dedication and grit is hard to teach. And a lot of our kids that we have coming out have that. So, and that's something that's hard to replicate, you know?
Yeah. So,
having that going into every season is definitely a feather in our cap. But, you know, we take it, like I said, one game at a time, see what we're doing and adjust.
All right. Well, incredible job. Let's do some shout outs here. Katie, let's start with you. Who do you want to give a shout out to? Who do you want to? Parents, who do you want to talk to?
My parents are actually in South Carolina right now, so they're not listening.
Nice. What are they doing in Carolina? Is vacationing? Hanging out?
Vacationing, yep.
They left you behind.
They left me all alone.
Who are you staying with? I hope you got a babysitter.
And my dog, Max.
All right, at least Max can take care of you. How about you, Anna? Who do you want to give a shout out to?
Probably just all of our teammates. Yeah.
Nice, very nice. And your parents.
If any of them are listening.
How's your slacker dad? How's he doing?
He's good. Yeah.
That's good. And Hutch, where do you want to go? Who do you want to give a shout out to?
My parents and my grandparents, they're going down to Matt's game in Adelphi.
Yeah, your grandparents are great people.
Yep, they are.
Your mom cracks, or your grandmother cracks me up because she's
a
like,
saint.
she's super. Yeah, I know. I want to find a wife like that.
She's a saint.
I heard she warms up your dad's bed before he gets in.
She does.
She literally lays in the bed
She really
first.
does.
I've never heard anything like that, but I want that.
It's
woman.
love. It's true love.
That's true. All right, O'Rourke, who do you want to give a shout out to? When did you play? What years?
I graduated in 2009.
Nice. Where'd you go then?
I went to St. Lawrence.
Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah, good school. I played a band gig at St. Lawrence with one of my buddies. It was fun. Good campus. Coach, how about you? Where'd you go to school?
I went to West Tennessee.
You were a Jenny guy. That's right. I think I knew that last time. Where'd you go to college?
I went to OCC in Lemoyne.
Nice. And Chuck Wilbur, no longer at, right? The
Still
legendary.
doing
The legendary.
another West Jenny, Ryan Micchio taking over there, and he's doing an awesome job.
All right, very cool. Did you want to give any shout outs, Coach? Anybody?
I guess shout out to my wife Jenny, who came on the trip with us.
Jenny,
and,
good.
Was a chaperone. She did a
Nice.
great job. And she showed the girls how to be in the city.
She belongs in the city.
Oh boy, I can see
Just
that.
keep your head up and keep walking. Don't let anything bother you.
Right, and shop a lot.
Yes, exactly.
And eat. All right, we'll be right back. Phil, what's next? Jump on the microphone. What do we got going on next?
We're going to be talking with Nolan Widener from Syracuse.com about the top 100 high school athletes and the arguments it spawned. There you go.
Phil's in there. ESPN. All right, we'll be right back. This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, presented by SummitCars.com, ESPN Radio 97.7, 100.1.
This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, brought to you by SummitCars.com.
All right, here we are back on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Our SummitCars.com spotlight interview. Syracuse Post-Standard high school writer Nolan is here on the program. Nolan, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And Phil, what's going on with you? You look all excited.
This is fun. I mean, this is this could go all kinds of places.
So here's the deal. Earlier this week, Syracuse.com released the, I guess, culmination of a long project that ranked the top 100 high school athletes in history of Central New York. And as you might expect, there were familiar names, not so familiar names, plenty of grapes, which is great, makes it fun like that, which was topped by none other than Breanna Stewart, which makes a ton of sense there. The guy who put it together, longtime writer, obviously, as I just pointed out. So Nolan here in studio with us. Nolan, let's talk about, first of all, the inspiration. What made you guys come up with the top 100?
Well, you know, as you probably noticed in the last few years, the media has become list heavy, and lists are fun, lists are good, lists are give people something to talk about. So it's sort of grown out of the first we did a top 50 all-time football greats, got a lot of reaction, a lot of debate. And then we did, the year before, the top 75 basketball players. That list could have easily been larger, but it certainly was bigger than football in this area because there's so much basketball. So my editor called me in one day and said, hey, let's do a top 100 greatest athletes of all time. And I said, oh, wow, every sport? He's like, yeah. And a little while later in the conversation, he's like, and girls and boys together. And I'm like,
oh, Nolan Widener, you got a job here to do.
So it was, it took a while to get on board with, for sure.
I love when in the reading of the story it said anyone in the project said good luck.
Yeah, well, then that's
right.
true. True quotes.
Who'd you consult with the most for this? Or who were those sources, I guess?
Well, I guess there's a lot of old timers. I hate to put names after this because I've just called them old timers, but I'll include myself in that list.
Yeah, right.
A lot of ADs and coaches. A couple examples: George Mangiacaro,
great guy,
guys like that. Buddy Waklinski at CBA,
my boy Buddy, nice,
helpful as always. Just a ton of people that we ran the list by, that we asked for help with. But, you know, I probably could have done 3 or 4 times as many people. But just looked around and then started going through halls of fames. I was able to sit down, and I've only been here 30 years, and I was able to sit down and write 200 names right off the top of my head. And
See, I couldn't have done that because, unlike you, I came here 20 years ago from out of town. So some of these names that were on the list were people I didn't have no idea about. And here's the real kicker. There were people, very familiar names to a lot of people that I didn't know came from here. The biggest example I thought were baseball players, like Mark Lemke, who was with the Atlanta Braves and on those teams in the 90s, and Dave Cash. Dave Cash doesn't know. I didn't realize he had Central New York roots, for example. I mean, those two just come to mind immediately as people who really, really did big things but had Central New York roots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, I guess, the funnest part of it for me. I was looking up information on people, sometimes kind of frustrating because the further you went back, the less, written you'd find on them, or you didn't really have to hunt more because there are kids that might have gotten mentioned in a couple of columns by Neil Kerr back in the 60s or even before that, whereas, the kids, more recent kids are, there's a ton of information.
You look at, was it obvious from, I guess, the outset that Brianna Stewart, with her staggering accomplishments, would end up number one? Was that kind of like already done?
No, I'm going to be honest.
A little debate there.
Yeah,
Good.
And I was on the other side of it for a while because I had trouble because I had to do this, the heavy lifting part of this work,
Right.
for this project. I had a hard time saying, well, how are you going to compare female and male athletes? There's been so many more boys' sports over the years. Mm-hmm. The opportunities go way back. They can go be big-time football stars, big-time basketball, big-time baseball, what have you, whereas girls' sports is really just still coming into its own in a lot of ways. So how do you make that comparison? And I'm, I'll be 65 next month, so
Don't mention that thing.
I had to get out of my old man head a little bit and say, well, you can't compare girls and boys. So
That's
I had
right,
to sort of open up my mind, and this is hard for people, the concept of it's not just, well, if you put them all, and had a decathlon, because then the list would be all boys. And so you really had to open up to the possibility that, it's beyond basketball. What has Brianna done? How do you just...
Well, I mean, it's beyond the state championships at the level. It's the 4 national titles. It's the 4 most outstanding players.
Yeah, but it's more than that.
NBA titles. And what she's done off the court in terms of all the things she's made awareness about her issues when she was a child and all that.
That's right.
And the impact she has off the court is almost gigantic, even more so than all the massive accomplishments on the court.
Let's keep going here. So we're talking to Nolan Widener here, top 100, Syracuse Post Standard. Let's talk about Dorsey Levens, Tim Green, Mike Hart.
And Greg Paulus. They run off the top 5.
Yeah, those are, how do you, I don't know, Dorsey Levens was the original number 1 in my mind because I didn't have Brianna out of the picture. I just didn't have her up there. And Dorsey, as good as he was in football, he was an all-state basketball player. He was, what did I write? A man among boys. Literally, I thought, seeing him out there or reading about his accomplishments, just one of those guys that you couldn't stop. We scored 50 points in a game one
crazy.
time. Yeah. Mike Hart, he was...
he comes into my era, and I can tell you he was the most electrifying of all the people I've seen in 20 years I've been here. Just the ability to do ridiculous things that no one else... It wasn't the numbers. Other people, I mean, no one was putting up his numbers, but other people put up big numbers. It was the things that happened, the runs he made at critical moments in big games that made it beyond even what he was already accomplishing.
Like you say, that overused word "ridiculous" really fits in that.
No, the overused word is unbelievable. I believe it because it happened.
Yeah. But ridiculous is exactly the word that comes to mind watching some of Mike's runs, on the field. And there were some decent arguments made for putting him in front of Dorsey Levens as well. Mm-hmm. Although I don't think he was quite the basketball player. He was an okay basketball player.
No, not even close to the basketball player.
Kind of a secondary sport.
No, not for him.
Yeah.
But another person I thought that was a really neat thing that you mentioned, you brought in people that have been great female Olympians, like Erin Hamlin from ends up number 31 on the list, who ended up becoming an Olympic medalist in luge, and Jennifer Rimes near the top 10 are in it, who became from Liverpool, who became a great Olympic runner in distance running, for example.
Yeah, and that opened up some more debate too, because you get into that. Well, Is this about what they did after high school, what they did during high school? And so you can't get into that back and forth. And speaking of Aaron Hamlin, I mean, luge isn't exactly a high school sport. You don't have luge teams. So you're kind of giving her credit for being a great athlete going on in another sport that she really, she didn't do in high school.
Yeah, that's nice. All right, Phil, you want to keep going or you want me to go?
No, the other persons I wanted to mention, a couple of people that I really thought were really neat mentions. One, Lopez Lemon, of course, the famous Tully athlete who came from here and actually carried the Olympic flag in the American
They had a great follow-up story. Did you guys see that follow-up story? I think it was on HBO Real Sports with him, the follow-up piece with his brothers and all that, and pretty incredible.
That stuff is it really is amazing. And I did a big story on his coach, Jim Pasha, a couple years ago, and we spent a lot of time talking about Lopez and the fact that when he first
he's a great guy and has a great family, by the way. Posh family.
And when he first came here, Jim saw some kid running on the roads around Tully Lake or something, and found out he was the Rogers family had brought him up here, and first thing he did was look up Bob Rogers and say, how do I get this kid on the track team?
Well, talk about, though, there's so much more with that story, too, with that him as an athlete and coming to the country, then bringing his brothers, then going back and being this famous guy that everybody, and meeting his mother for the first time or whatever it was after so many years. I mean, that whole story was just so compelling.
It really is. That whole history over there,
unbelievable,
of what's going on in some of those countries. It's just amazing. And you can't if you find somebody that's a refugee from there, you can't not find a heartbreaking story in there, at least one or multiple.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Go ahead, Phil.
Speaking of families, I mean, we have on the list all three of the Powell brothers.
Yeah.
Casey, Mike, and Ryan, all there in the list.
Who do you
Not
leave
to mention
out,
the Thompson brothers, the great Lafayette lacrosse stars who have done incredible things in the college and professional ranks. How did you try and figure out who was the best among those guys? They have Casey ranked higher than Ryan and Mike in this one, although you can make case of all. How did you differentiate those guys?
I spent a lot of time reading old feature stories about them, which there are numerous, of course, and their high school exploits, trying to give one of them an edge over the other. Being a pretty big lacrosse fan and having two boys that played, we all spent a lot of time in the Carrier Dome watching all three of them. And honestly, I can't legitimately sit here and say, well, this was the best, this was second, this was third. But you had to rank them. The two older guys, Casey and Ryan, were both three-sport athletes at Carthage.
Right.
I don't think Michael was.
Even though Mike probably did more in the high school lacrosse level in terms of getting Carthage further.
He did, and I think he had bigger numbers than the other two. So it was very difficult. And I was reading about their pro careers, and it was just a really tough choice. And I wish I could give you some really good explanation of how I ranked the three of them, but I can't.
Right. Keep it rolling. This is fun.
And the other thing now, of course, no doubt after the list came out, you heard about the people you weren't on the list.
Oh, absolutely.
And he said he got hate mail about the
few haters out there.
I'm not talking about criticism about but the hate mail. I'm like, this is 2019, of course. But what I would say is, what were the ones you heard about the most?
Yeah.
In terms of omissions.
There are, and it's a kind of a short list, but there were loud complaints. I think Dajuan Coleman, the former JD center who played at SU for many years unfortunately because of his injuries. I think I heard about him quite a bit.
Remember, just to put in perspective, we had Brandon Trish on the list.
Yep.
But not Andy Roughton's on the list. And way up at number 20 is Bernard Blunt, the great JD star from the early late 80s and 90s, who set all the scoring records in New York State when he was here before going to, Bernard Blunt. So that's to put in context.
Yes, and so you can debate these things, obviously, on and on. But another was the great Adirondack athlete, Jason Gleesman, a big-time wrestler. And
there aren't many wrestlers on the list, not many full-time wrestlers. You mentioned Dan Hunt was kind of low, I thought low on the list. The only three-time state champion from West Genesee. In an era, remember, when there was only one state champion per weight class in the state. There wasn't Division I and II until early in this
Yes.
millennium. So it's even more impressive, I figured.
Well, and Gleason was also an all-state offensive lineman, which I'm not sure I realized he was all-state in that sport. So that's one that I would put an asterisk by. And another great wrestler from Canastota named Terry Showalter, who at one time, and he doesn't have it anymore, but he set the state record for wins, I think, with 200.
Probably the DeMcCullis, the brothers from Hilton, probably broke it the way they've been going.
Yeah. So those are some. Oh, another was Donald Foyle, the former Hamilton and Colgate star who played in the NBA for a number of years. And again, a guy I covered in high school years and years ago when Tom Blackford had those great Hamilton teams.
Tommy had a bunch of those teams, too.
Yeah.
They did. I think that was the only one I ever had that with anybody over 6 foot or 6'2". He had all these teams. All these kids are the same size, and they'd run them down the court and beat the crap out of you.
With a 1-3-1 zone.
Yes. But those are some of the names.
I wanted to bring up some of the people that I thought, people don't realize that people from this area have won championships at the highest professional level.
Yes.
Dave Justy was on the Pittsburgh Pirates 1971 World Series team. Doug Swift was one I really thought about. Guy who played football here, ended up on the Miami Dolphins teams of the 70s, the perfect 1972 season, a Central New Yorker. And there's another guy that I might not have known much about, but Doug Swift.
And that's a guy, I'm glad you mentioned that because I would love to pursue more of a story on him because he graduated from Nottingham, went to Amherst. And
not exactly a football power.
No,
Amherst College.
And his whole path to becoming, a player in the NFL, and then he ended up getting a medical degree, and he lives outside of Philadelphia now. I think he's is he an anesthetologist or a
anesthetologist? Yeah, but in other words,
I can't pronounce.
That's an interesting life. I mean, a lot of people, when they don't know what to do after football ends, and wow, he does that?
Quite accomplished. And I'm sure it's just a great story.
Absolutely.
Keep it going. This is great.
And I want to mention some of the other people in the top 10. We mentioned that Greg Paul's was there. Pete Holohan was ranked number 6. Walt Patulski was ranked number 7. And these guys that people know about. But number 8 was Don Page from Baldwinsville. He was the top listed runner. Tell us about Don Page.
Yeah, he didn't come to my mind originally because, again, he's from back and before we got here. Yeah, and as I started doing research, and I knew about Don Page. He's had sectional records, and it's a name you're going to run into. But I started looking into him, and I thought, man, at one time he was the guy in the 800, right? And really, and he went to Villanova, and it was a big star there, and was that the 80 Olympics that he was supposed to be involved?
The 80 Olympics was boycotted. Yeah, Moscow.
Like Gene Mills in wrestling,
Same thing.
And Gene still talks about it.
Yeah, yes, Gene Mills, but he wasn't from here. That's the thing.
Right. He would have been on the list.
Right. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back and stick with Nolan Widener here for the rest of the show. We'll be right back. ESPN Radio 97.7, 100.1.
This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, brought to you by SummitCars.com.
All right, here we back. Nolan Widener, Phil Black with Phil. Nolan, where are we going next, fellas? We got about 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, other people I want to mention on the list, the really neat people I think on the list is Beth Mowens, was a great athlete at North Syracuse long before her great broadcasting career here at ESPN or at ESPN and all the things she's done. What a pioneer she is in terms of great player coaches who became great coaches. Jeff Knittel, who was a player state champion at Chittenango, then coached the state championship team at Fulton, and Joe Papaleo, the longtime CBA soccer coach who was a great goalie. Talk about those guys. I mean,
yeah, Knittel was a guy that I saw right when I first came here, and what a great scorer, what a great midfielder. And soccer's a sport that doesn't always get its due around here. And Jeff has stayed with it. Jeff has worked with the New York West soccer program and all that. He's just a great player. Joe, obviously, that been at CBA forever. Shows works a full-time job, coaches on top of that. Just a fantastic soccer mind. Another one is Tommy Tanner, who was
Tanner.
Almost forgot about
name.
Tommy.
Yeah.
He was my buddy back during the Syracuse Salty Dogs days. But he was quite the player at Henniger back when again soccer was kind of a neighborhood sport over there, and
it's still not really developed everywhere, and not in terms of the high school game the way we know it now.
Right. And I don't know about high school ranks, but I don't think too many people have done more for local soccer than Tommy Tanner as far as coming back as a player and a coach, and so
That's a good pick right there.
That was one I was kind of proud of snagging him.
No question. Yeah.
I'll tell you, we're going to have you back on this program eventually when you put up a list of the great. If you do a coaches list, but that could take years because the guys will just never stop talking about the old days.
I don't know how many more years I have left. So maybe that'll be my final act.
We gotta have him. We should have him come on the show every couple of weeks.
All right, we got a couple of weeks.
We gotta bounce. We gotta get you on. I mean, just talk high school sports.
Yeah, we could do that. Absolutely.
Happy to do that. I enjoy it.
All right, we'll talk about it. All right, we got to fly Nolan Weiner, Phil Blackwell. Great job, Nolan. That was incredible. Phil,
Thank you.
always incredible work that you do. We'll see you next week. ESPN Radio 97.7, 100.1, 100.1, 100.1, 100.1, 100.1, 100.1, 100.